My name is Helen Spencer. I'm currently based in Kent. I grew up on a farm with a lot of freedom, loving nature and loving wildlife, and always having adventures. So I naturally became a vet, but I wasn't really cut out for just working in the UK. I wanted more adventure than that. So I've managed to combine my love of adventure with my veterinary skills, and I currently work for a global charity called the Worldwide Veterinary Service, and I travel around to Thailand, Cambodia, and India, treating and neutering street dogs, with teaching surgical skills to in-country vets and taking part in mass rabies vaccination projects. So that's a little bit about my history. But in my free time, I love to travel. I always have. I never did as a kid. I had a farm to enjoy and rivers and lakes and forests and a pony. But I started sort of when I left school and had a bit of independence, mainly traveling with my backpack. Not a lot of money, but I managed to explore lots of different countries with my backpack, staying in hostels, that kind of thing. And eventually that led to sort of bigger and harder things. And I began doing a few expeditions, some group, some solo. I have hiked across part of Afghanistan. I've hiked from east to west across Madagascar, part of Yemen. I did a winter expedition on camels across the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. I quite like a purpose, so walking from across a country kind of appeals to me. So I've walked the length of Palestine and Lebanon, also part of North Korea. And more recently, I have skied the last degree to the South Pole.
When you started talking about the countries, I love the fact it's just casually dropped in, like hiked in Afghanistan and Yemen and North Korea, and not in air quotes, the maybe the most popular countries to sort of adventure in. But I love it though. I just want to always take you back to leaving school and going backpacking. Was that on a gap year, and was that sort of solo, or were you going with friends? And did you start out maybe going to Europe or Asia? How did you build your confidence with traveling?
The day after I left school, I'd earned just about enough money to go interrailing with a couple of friends. So we had about £10 a day, which included accommodation, food, entry tickets. And my parents very kindly gave me the actual ticket as a sort of present for leaving school. But that was my first foray into really traveling, and I absolutely loved it. After that, I also live on part of a zoo, which I know sounds quite weird, but I grew up with tigers and gorillas and elephants. And as part of that, I managed to get a placement in my gap year in Borneo, actually looking after orangutans. So that was probably the sort of first time I went somewhere, further away than Europe. That was a serious baptism of fire and opened my eyes massively to a very different part of the world. But I did. I absolutely thrived. I was a pretty shy farm kid growing up, very little confidence, much more used to being around animals than people. But that trip, like a lot of people who take a bit of time off and travel, it really brought me into my own. And it was a great, great part of my life and set me up very well to go to university. I think without having done things like that, I would have not relished university quite so much. I had 5 years at university and I absolutely loved it. More the social life as well as the veterinary degree.
So you grew up on the farm, but the farm was also attached to a zoo.
Yeah.
How did that work?
My neighbour was a big gambler, and he won the estate next to my farm in the 60s. And he was also, his other passion was animals. So just for him and his family, he had the odd tiger and the odd gorilla. And it sort of grew and grew. And in the 70s, I think, he started opening it to the public. Some of our land was used for the zoo. So we had free access to the zoo. His son is my age as well. So I got to hang out there a lot. An awful lot, all through school, even all through university. I spent a lot of my holidays just helping out, hanging out with the animals at the zoo.
I'm literally like, first of all, I was thinking, like in the 60s and 70s, it's probably like health and safety was a bit more lax. So I was thinking, is this like legal?
Yeah.
Like, is this fair on like the animals? But what an amazing well, opportunity and exposure from such a young age. No wonder you became a vet.
Exactly, exactly. There was no other path really that I even considered since I was about 5. So I was extremely fortunate. There's not many people that know what they want to do at that age and carry it through. A lot of people want to be a vet when they're kids, but most people grow out of it. But I didn't. And I still haven't. I'm 50 now and I still absolutely love it.
But I love what you said about your gap year actually going over to Borneo and thriving and building that confidence before going to university, because I do think travel is so powerful and can help you develop that like internal confidence when you get the opportunity to explore and to see more of the world and see different cultures. And I mean, it'd be great to talk a little bit about some of the walks and hikes that you've done as well, especially in some of some of the countries that you talked about. Hiking over in Afghanistan. How did you do that? Was that in a group? Was that solo? How did that even come about?
Yeah, that one was a group trip to the Wakhan corridor. So this was during the Taliban rule while they were still fighting. But the Wakhan corridor is the part that sort of sticks out in the northeast of Afghanistan. And it's actually a sort of strange annex of the country that the British drew. We were very good at drawing lines on a map. And it was basically an area of mountains that was included in Afghanistan to separate Pakistan from Russia, really, and then there's China at the end of it. So it was trying to make a buffer zone. So it was a fairly unique part of Afghanistan that wasn't particularly dangerous at that point, but we still had to get there. So yeah, there was a group of us and we had a guide and we went right up into the mountains, really, really high peaks that very few people have ever crossed apart from the local Wakhan people who are semi-nomadic. Some of them live up in the mountains with their sheep and goats in the summer and the other half live down in the valley. And then they join up in the winter when it's way too cold to be up in the mountains. And we were really welcomed by them. At that point, they hadn't really seen an awful lot of Westerners. I didn't really know how we would be perceived or welcomed, but they were incredibly welcoming and invited us into their yurts to rest. It was cold. It's high altitude, sort of 4,000 meters most of the time. We were pretty exhausted from long days. Super, super friendly and welcoming. Let us help milk the goats, make cheese. It was really lovely to meet people. I think expeditions for me are just as much about the people that you meet and the people on your expedition as well as where you go. I think people really make an expedition or any sort of travel for me.
Because you spend a lot of time with animals and you sort of mentioned that maybe you were a bit sort of quieter as a child, but obviously like thrive throughout sort of university after having your gap year. When you are on expeditions, do you find it easier, being by yourself or being as part of a group? How do you get the balance right to make sure that you're social enough, but you've got enough time for yourself as well?
I think that's a really good question because it's really important that you do strike that balance. I think expeditions by their nature are tough and it can bring out the best of people, but also the worst of people. I am much more confident now, perhaps not to do podcasts. This is not my natural environment, but with people. But I do need time out. So on expeditions, my preference, even though it's heavier, is always to have my own tent, just so you have just that little bit of personal space away from a group situation. I think I'm pretty tolerant, but I have about a 10-day tolerance. After that, even things start to grate. So if you're on a longer expedition than that, I think, and you're tired and you're hungry and things are not going right, that's when things for me start to grate even more and I have to bite my tongue a bit. But yeah, I think I'm much better now, but I still do need my own time.
Oh, 1,000%. And I've come to the realization that I just have a social battery. And then once my social battery, I can be the life and soul of the party. I will chat to anybody, and then it gets to a point where I am done. Like I can't even fake it. Like I can't even like smile at people. I just sort of stand there with like a look like I want to go. I need to leave, and want to make like an Irish exit, and just like I've got to just go. I do understand about that sort of. I think I'm more. I think you said like 10 days, and I was thinking to myself, "Ooh, am I about 2 weeks?" But I think 10 to 12 days, that is the honeymoon period. That is the sweet spot, I think. Is if I go, like, hiking, for example, with new people, that's where I start off with. I think I couldn't go into, like, a month-long hike with somebody who I don't know, just because um it can be emotionally quite challenging. Yeah. Talking of tough expeditions, like you did an incredibly tough expedition aiming to ski to the South Pole in Antarctica. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more about where this idea came from, where this dream came from, and how it came about.
So I have always had a fascination of polar history, of human history. So I grew up on tales of Shackleton and Scott and Amundsen, like I'm sure many people did. And I always dreamed of going to Antarctica, but I never ever imagined that I could. Thinking of those polar heroes and more recent ones like Ranulph Fiennes and Henry Worsley, they're all very tough men with the strength of 10 bears. They've all got beards. A lot of them are ex-military. So I really had no inkling that I would ever be able to go to the South Pole. I mean, how do you even start? I'm none of those things. There's not many females. I think there's still only 13 that have skied to the South Pole on their own. Just to be clear, I'm not one of them. I did grow a group of 4, and I skied the last degree, and not from the coast to the pole. um, but yeah, so how did I start and why? Well, I think because of algorithms and social media and my love of Shackleton and all things polar, several years ago now, this thing popped up, which was a team called Shackleton, who were offering a polar skills course, a week long, and in Norway. So it was also in a place called Finse, which is pretty famous, as it's where all of the polar explorers that's ever been really have trained. It's the most like Antarctica, but in Europe. So I thought, well, I mean, it's a week. It's in Norway. It's fairly easy to get to. I'm just going to give it a go. So I signed up to that. I trained for that. And it was really tough because I am not even a skier. I don't like skiing. And then this is cross country skiing, very narrow skis, but you're also pulling a polk or a sledge. So if you go downhill, the sledge just smacks you at the back of the knees and topples you over. And if you're going uphill, then you have to pull the bloody thing along behind you. And in that sledge is all of your extra clothing, your food, your water, your tent, all of those things. So it can be quite heavy. This was only a week, but at the end of the week, although it was a real steep learning curve, which I enjoyed, and again, fantastic people, I just thought, you know what? It's not for me. I've tried it now, and I'm all up for trying anything once. But no, I was the weakest in the group by far, and it showed some big cracks in my fitness and also, I guess, my mental strength. So I did it. I was happy with the fact that I'd at least given it a go. But I definitely came back and told everyone, no, that's not for me. But I guess Antarctica was always still in my heart, at the back of my mind. What if? What if? Oh, could I do it? No, don't be silly. You know, you have all these conversations like, this is ridiculous. Of course you can't. But what if I could? So fast forward a few years, actually, and I needed a challenge. I was in quite bad mental and physical health, and it was also a unique point in my life where I'd actually sold my veterinary clinic in London, and I was having a bit of time out. and it would never have been the correct time at any other time in my entire life. But it was an opportunity that I could actually do it. But well, anyway, I said yes, but then I had an entire year to get myself in shape, which was a massively steep curve. I was in a pretty bad state, and I had a huge amount of help with fitness, with physio, with things like cold rooms where you go. There's like -60, and you're there, and your swimmers. It's only like 7 minutes, but it's meant to help acclimatize you. It's meant to help with nerve issues, which is what I was suffering from. Cold plunges. I trained at the Altitude Centre in London, which is roughly about 3,000 meters. So you do the same sort of exercise classes that you would in a normal gym, but they turn the oxygen down to simulate 3,000 meters elevation, which is actually the exact height I would be on the polar plateau. And the main thing that I did was to get your body used to hauling a pulk, which would weigh about 45 kilos, roughly. I dragged 2 car tires around with me. So I was that weird person in Richmond Park for 6-7 hours at a weekend, dragging these bloody tires around behind me with people looking at me like I was crazy. And I think at the end I counted 28 dogs attacked my tires. So it was a huge amount of training. But because I had this terrifying goal at the end, it really spurred me on to doing that. It's the only bit of control I had on this expedition because I couldn't test my kit, which was actually really terrifying for me. I like control. And if I'm doing anything else, hiking, then I would hike in those boots. I would carry a heavy pack. I would simulate hills by using the gym treadmill if there weren't any hills around. I would try and do what you're going to do on the expedition. But in an environment like that, at high altitude, at temperatures of -30 or -40, I couldn't test any of my kit, not even my boots, let alone all my face protection and things like that. So I had an awful lot of help and advice. I sought that from everywhere I could. I sucked it all in. I begged, borrowed, and stole kit. I applied for various grants to help me financially. And nutrition was another thing, getting to grips with that and how to cope on the ice. But finally, it was December 2024 that I flew out to Santiago in Chile and then down south to Punta Arenas to meet the rest of the team.
Oh, fun. Keep going. What was the team like? Had you met them before, or was it all new people?
I'd met, so the 2 guys, I'd met them very briefly because another thing that my team asked me to do was to make sure that my fitness was adequate and I wouldn't die when I was there. We all had to go to the Loughborough Elite Sports Centre, me at an elite sports centre, and have our fitness tested, which was in, I think, October. So I met them there. That was a horrific day of, weighted vests, treadmills, blood tests, ending with VO2 max tests. I don't know if
Oof.
you've ever done that, but it's a
I
pretty
haven't, but I've
horrible
had
test.
friends.
Oh,
Yeah, friends who've
yeah.
done it.
You have a mask on your face which measures your oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, and you are put on a bike, and you have to keep at a certain speed whilst the torque is turned up, and you basically keep going until you pass out or fall off the bike. And they're testing, how long you can stay on the bike for. It's awful. But anyway, I had met the 2 guys there, and my guide was the woman who taught me in Finza. Her name is Amelia Rudd, and she's absolutely awesome. And she's skied solo in Antarctica to the pole twice. So I was in very good hands with her. So I met the rest. We all met up in Punta Arenas. We had a few days there to gather our kit and sort out our food, because the food you take, you've got dried meals for breakfast and dinner, but for lunch, you need, well, I say lunch, there's no lunch break in Antarctica, because if you sat down and had lunch, you'd freeze to death. So you ski for an hour and then you stop for 5 minutes, and you have to eat and drink as much as you can in those 5 minutes, and then off you go again. And it's eat, ski, sleep in whatever order, it doesn't matter, literally the whole time. So when we got to Punta Arenas in Chile, in the very south of Chile. We had to go shopping for chocolate and cheese and salami, which are my sort of go-to. I had nuts and trail mix as well, but it all needs to be chopped up into bite-sized pieces because it all freezes. You're at -30. And if you take bigger chunks, you will just break your teeth. So there's a lot of food preparation that goes on when you're there, and all separated into a bag a day, a graze bag. So all of that. And then we were ready to go to Antarctica. The plane that takes you to Antarctica is actually a fairly normal 757 Icelandic airplane and Icelandic crew. And it's about 4 hours. You fly over the sea, you see the pack ice underneath. It's super exciting. And then you see the mountains of the Antarctic Peninsula. And then you land on a blue ice runway, which is exactly that, bright blue ice. And they specifically chose that place to put the base camp because of this runway. Obviously, you can't put on the brakes on the blue ice runway. So it's about 4 miles long, I think. And you just glide to a stop, which is pretty terrifying, but actually quite smooth. And then you exit the plane and you're in Antarctica. And this is somewhere I've just dreamt of going my whole life, really. And the first thing I did was burst into tears, which was quite embarrassing because then my tears froze and it was a bit of a mess. But anyway, they then transport you to the base camp. There's a company called ALE, Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions, who run the flight and the base camp. And there's actually a good few hundred people at base camp, and they have a mess tent and amazing food. And everyone there is on some sort of expedition or adventure of a lifetime. So there's full hype in the mess tent. Most people are there to climb Mount Vincent, which is one of the 7 summits. We didn't really meet many people wanting to ski to the South Pole, but I did meet skydivers and fossil hunters and all sorts of incredibly excited and driven people. So it's a really fun place, and it's actually not too cold there. It's at sea level as well, and it's quite sheltered. But we had a few days there. While we were there, we saw people being medevaced out back to base camp from the polar plateau where we were about to go with fairly horrific cold injuries, which was terrifying, added to my anxiety every single day. We had to wait for our own weather window, and the more days that ticked by, the more my anxiety grew. But eventually we got the warning that we could fly. We had a half an hour warning to unpack our tents because everyone's camping at base camp, and get our kit ready and get on board a Basler plane, which is a small, unpressurized, bumpy, loud plane, which took us 4 hours into the interior of Antarctica to get to the last degree. And you climb up to 3,000 meters, so away from all the mountains until it's just fairly flat, solid ice as far as you can see. And then the kind of life-defining moment was it lands on it's got skis on the plane. They land, and everybody has to get out quite quickly. The engines don't stop, and then they take off again. And you're literally on your own. Your safety net is flying off into the sunset, and there you are, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from anyone else. When the noise of the propellers finally slowed and disappeared, and all the wind from the propellers went, it was actually a really lovely, calm day, which was just an amazing way to start the expedition because I was really anxious about expectations. I have no idea what it would be like up there. I could only imagine. So it's fairly flat, the plateau, about 3,000 meters, and it's 360 degrees white. There's no landmarks at all. There's no mountains up there. There's no wildlife. There's literally nothing. And it's a bit like being on the open ocean. There's even sastrugi, which are ridges of ice, which do look a bit like waves, even though they don't move. And then you've got to pull your pulk across them, which is bloody hard work. Because of the altitude, it is really hard work. 3,000 meters at polar regions actually feels more like 4,000 meters just because of the geography of the place. So, you're breathless, you're exhausted. I couldn't eat very much. You just feel a bit nauseous all the time. But we started slowly, and then we built up our hours and our days. It's a trudge, so you're one behind the other. The wind is coming off the pole, so it's always in your face. It's noisy, it's loud. I kind of wasn't prepared for the wind, but you can't chat to your teammates at all. You're in your own zone, and I think as well as being a physical challenge, harder for me was the mental challenge, because you are in your own little zone all day. There's 5 minutes every hour where you get to regroup, eat, drink, and chat, catch up with how everyone is, change positions in your line, and then off you go again. And you just keep going, navigating not due south, because that would take you into the sea, but we were going to the geographic South Pole, not the magnetic South Pole. So we followed a bearing and we just kept going and kept going. It is hard. It really is. I say the mental part of it was probably harder than the physical part of it, although that got harder and harder the further we went into it. It's the most inhospitable place. Humans are not meant to be there. Mother Nature is reminding you of that every minute. But that's what I wanted. I really wanted to feel tiny in this huge expanse of a place and have everything thrown at me and feel completely vulnerable. I know that sounds like some sort of masochistic idea, but that's really what I needed and what I wanted at that time. I was coping with quite a lot, and that's one way I cope with difficulties, is getting out and pushing myself to the limits. And it worked. It's 14 million square kilometers of ice, and it's 90% of the world's fresh water. It's also the largest desert in the world. And another fun fact is the sun never sets. We were there midsummer. This was December, January, a year ago. So the sun just circles around your head, which is quite discombobulating as well, because you've no idea what time of the day or night it is. It all looks the same. But there's only one sunrise a year, which is in September, and there's only one sunset, which is in March, which kind of blew my mind a bit. But on a sunny day, it's absolutely beautiful. You can see these rainbows that form a halo around the sun. It's called a parhelion. Absolutely stunning, something to do with the ice crystals in the air. Or sundogs, where you see 3 different suns. You think you're going mad, but again, it's something to do with the ice crystals and the sheer coldness of the place.
Did spending time out there in Antarctica doing this incredibly hard challenge, yes, you are in a group with 3 other people, but mentally you're also, by yourself, you're in your head a lot as well. Did completing this challenge and being out there give you what you needed to move forward?
Yes, it did. I had a lot riding on this. What I didn't mention is this wasn't just about getting to the pole for me. It wasn't just the being in Antarctica. This was actually me trying to cope with quite a tough time in my life. In August 23, I lost both my parents in an accident. And it was 2 weeks before I was due to get married as well. And it was quite a lot. So I was in quite a dark place. And I know through being through not quite such tough times, but some tough times before this, that how I cope is being on my own and going through a physical endurance. So some of these long hikes I've done are because I was struggling with something and I needed to, if you like, help myself, cure myself. And this particular period was hopefully the worst thing I will ever go through. Fingers crossed. And so I picked the hardest and most terrifying expedition I could. And I wanted it to almost break me down. I really did. I really wanted to feel that vulnerable. And in getting to the pole, I left a lot of that there. Getting to the pole was hugely emotional, as you can probably imagine. I was totally exhausted, incredibly relieved to see it, to touch that beautiful silver orb, which I have seen so many other people pictured in front of or behind, and the beautiful flags there. But I just never ever imagined I could get there. And in those circumstances, it just meant everything to me to get there, to touch that. I took my mother's necklace with me in my pocket, and when things were really hard, I could just feel it there, spurring me on. Her motto was always kick on. She was that kind of a, fierce woman. And I bloody well did. And I got there and I put that necklace round the pole. And the other thing was, just having that with me and sort of taking my parents with me in a way, it really did help me. I also fundraised in memory of my mum who had Parkinson's, and I was very generously given or supported by £20,000. So I had that riding on my shoulders as well. So I had to complete this expedition, and I did. So yes, it did absolutely help me with the horrid process of grief, which I'm sure many people have been through, and it is very tough. But I don't expect many people to go to these extremes. I just knew that this was the thing to help me. And yes, it did. I gained confidence again, and a bit more self-assurance, and I guess pride. It's not a word I can even say easily. I've never really been proud of much that I've done in my life apart from physical challenges. And this will always be my moment, if you like. I think it will probably be the pinnacle of my expeditions, because I don't really know what else would top this. But yes, in answer to your question, it really did help me.
How long were you on the ice for? How long were you over there for?
So I was in Antarctica for a little over 3 weeks, but the actual skiing was 8 days.
And how was it in the tents,
It's actually not as bad as you would think. I really don't enjoy camping in the rain in England. It's really, it's pretty miserable, isn't it? But in Antarctica, -30, it got to -40 at the pole. You've got these double skin tents, and you've got a vestibule that you cook inside, and you're boiling water for your supper, but you're also boiling your flasks of water for the next day. And to do that at altitude and at those temperatures, you've got the stove on for sometimes something like 5 hours, sometimes more every night, and you're inside the tent with the stove. So actually, it heats up quite nicely, and you could just wear long johns in the tent. So things like going to the loo, like when you actually had to leave the tent to go to the loo, was pretty brutal. Otherwise, I never left the tent. We had some fun times in the tent with our team. So actually, I really enjoyed that. I think the worst bit of the whole expedition is when you wake up in the morning and you've got to leave your warm sleeping bag. It's probably the same in England in the rain. It's just that dreadful. You have to. There's no half measures. You have to get up properly or not at all. And especially there, you've got to get up. You've got to put the stove on. You've got to start heating the water again. You've got to start shoveling snow on. You can't go outside until you've got all your gear on, and the noise of the wind from inside the tent is horrendous. Always worse than it actually is outside.
I'm also just thinking of timings as well, because I've hiked with a girl called Alex before, and Alex is very efficient in the mornings. And sometimes I'll be like pottering around, having a great old time. Now look out, and I open my tent, and Alex is like just sat there, everything packed up, like waiting for me. I'm literally like, oh, but in those temperatures, I suppose you've got to get your no offense, I would be very annoyed if there was some flappers and like I'm stood there in -30 degrees waiting for somebody else. Like, how did you get the timings right so that you were all ready at roughly the same time?
Well, we had two people per tent, so I'm not the best in the morning. So Amelia really is. So we worked it that she got up. She's super efficient. She's the guide who's done this several times before. So she decided she would always like to do the breakfast, which suited me just fine. So I had a bit more time to sort of get myself ready and do a bit of faffing. But you're exactly right. In the other tent was the two guys who would be on a slightly different time scale, but you need to make sure that everyone leaves the tent at the same time. You put the tents down at the same time and you go at the same time. And therefore we had walkie-talkies to make sure that we were all aligned with time, and to also wake the lads up in the morning, because it's bright sunshine. You've got earplugs, you've got face masks on. It's hard to know what time it is. So yeah, the walkie-talkies were a brilliant trick that Amelia bought.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
There was also the code brown coming over the walkie-talkie, which means someone's gone out for a poo.
For some reason, in my head, I was just thinking, but if you're sharing a tent, this would not be the nicest thing. I would just be thinking, wouldn't you just do it in, okay, this is going to sound really gross, a plastic bag inside the tent, and then you'd have something squishy and warm to hold?
Well, weeing I did do inside the tent, but in the vestibule. But if I could, there was only one occasion when we both actually had a poo inside the tent when there was a massive blizzard and we would have got frost knit bottoms. The other thing to consider is that everything freezes very fast, but you
Oh,
do have to take out, or you have to ship all your poo out with you. So it has to be done in a bag. And then you bag it up and you put it in the bottom of your poke. So yeah, it freezes really quickly, but I still tried to go outside.
sorry, I'm just literally like, I,
Everyone asks me that. I think the most common questions I've ever got about this expedition is, "Did you see a penguin?" No. And how did you have a poo? That's what people want to know. Very quickly would be my answer.
it's the important questions, and actually,
Yeah.
these are the questions that need to be answered because these are sometimes the concerns that people have before they take on a big adventure or a big challenge. So, Helen, you are on social media. Would you like to share where you're most active so that people can connect with you and find out more about your previous expeditions?
Yes, I'm on Instagram. I'd love to hear from anyone. Any questions about Antarctica, particularly? My Instagram handle is adventure_vet_spence, SPENCE.
Awesome. I will include the links to your Instagram, to your Just Giving in the show notes so that people can support, connect, follow along. But Helen, I'd love for you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who want to take on a big challenge, who maybe want to step outside their comfort zone and do something so far removed from what they thought they could ever possibly do. And apart from just do it, what advice would you like to share?
A couple of things, I guess. In this world of fairly instant gratification, just to put it out there that some dreams can take time, and they're often the best ones. This one was 40 plus years of dreaming and 3 years really of training. And to believe in yourself, our minds and bodies can do difficult things, often more than we ever realize. So just taking small steps and trying the thing, whatever you want to do, pulling the metaphorical tire if you like, and you might well surprise yourself like I did. But also, I guess my mantra in life is quite simple. It's don't be a dick. Um, and there's three areas of that. It's don't be a dick to yourself. Look at what goes into you, whether that's nutrition, but what you listen to, what you choose to watch, the people that you surround yourself with. Don't be a dick to others. I mean, there's compassion, there's kindness, there's respect, there's helping others. On expeditions, you might go to remote areas like I have where people have actually never seen a Westerner. So that's a huge responsibility to not be a dick. But also, the third part of this is not to be a dick with our environment, our beautiful planet that we live on and we enjoy exploring. And that might be just what you consume, the amount of waste, plastic pollution, transport options, keeping to trails, tidying up your campsites. So it can encompass all sorts of things, but my main mantra again is just don't be a dick.
Helen, I absolutely love that. That has never come up before on the podcast. So I think it's very, very memorable to people and will stick in people's heads. Don't be a dick. Helen, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing more about your adventures, your stories, and the amazing work that you're doing to raise funds for Parkinson's. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
My absolute pleasure.
Hey, tribe, how are you all doing? I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Helen. What an incredible woman, what an incredible journey that she has been on. It's just amazing to learn more about the physical and mental challenges that she has experienced while being on this long polar expedition, how she's coped with loss, being vulnerable and finding that strength while being out on the ice. I really do think her story does really share like her courage and her resilience and, pursuing her goals, even when the journey is so long and so demanding. Just so many lessons in perseverance and taking those small steps towards big dreams. Absolutely love that episode, and everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com, so please do go and check it out. Now, if you are interested in colder adventures, polar exploration, then please do go and check out the Polar Explorers resources page. I have spoken to a lot of women who have done expeditions to both poles, women who've skied across Greenland. We've spoken to Rosie Stancer, who was once described by journalists as a cross between Tinkerbell and the Terminator. Preet Shondi has been on, and Preet's actually been on 3 times. And what I love about Preet's story is by listening to the episodes, you can see her growth and development and how she has become this phenomenal polar explorer. But we also hear from old school, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but, women like Anne Bancroft, who was the first woman to ski to both poles and to lead the first all-women's expedition to the South Pole, and how she helps girls and women find their voice and potential in whatever they do. We have spoken to Lucy Shepherd. We've spoken to Molly Hughes. I don't know if Molly's record is still standing, but when she was on the Tough Girl podcast, she was 29. She was the youngest woman to ski from Hercules Inlet in Western Antarctica to the South Pole. We've spoken with Wendy Searle. We've spoken with Felicity Aston. We've spoken to Felicity twice, actually. She became the first woman to ski alone across Antarctica. We've had Maria, I'm so sorry how I pronounce your surname, Legistan. She's a Welsh-British polar adventurer who was the first person to cycle to the South Pole from the edge of the continent, which she did way back in 2013. But there are so many lessons to be learned from these women who are going into these extreme environments, who are stepping outside of their comfort zone and what they are learning. Now, I totally understand that you may not be heading to the South Pole or the North Pole. It may not be a dream of yours, but there are still lessons that you can apply to your everyday life. Maybe when you're thinking, can't be bothered today, like put yourself in the position of a polar explorer. It's like, well, no, sometimes you've got to get out of the tent. You've got to get out of your warm sleeping bag. You've got to show up. You've got to turn up. You've got to do what needs to be done. So there's so many lessons to be learned. So think about how you can apply those lessons and learning to your life. I'm a big advocate for having a goal, having a plan, showing up, working hard towards your goals and dreams, putting in the work. But also the key thing, to be honest, is starting. It is taking that first step. And the step before that is figuring out what it is you want to do. And if you're not sure, then throw your mind open to everything and anything, whether that is reading different books, whether that's listening to different podcast episodes. Find that spark of inspiration. Make that your mission. If you don't know what it is you want to do, then just be like, I'm going to try loads of different things, have loads of different experiences. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to sign up for things, even if it's outside my comfort zone. I'm going to have the courage to participate. I'm going to have the courage to say yes. And that is what I want for you. Have the courage to say yes. Follow your dreams. You have one life. You really do have to get out there and live that to the best of your potential. Oh, I'm feeling so motivated. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for listening to the Tough Girl podcast. You can find out more about me, the different adventures and challenges that I've done through the website toughgirlchallenges.com. I'm currently in training for my next hike, which is going to be walking the length of Europe, walking from Holland to Nice, about 2,200 kilometers. It's going to be super fun and enjoyable. I am going to be sharing the training and the expedition through my social media at toughgirlchallenges.com. But I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear what your goals are. What are your ambitions? What are you up to? Big shout out to Chloe Steed as well, who's currently, she might be out on the Southwest Coast Path or she might be out on the GR10 now. I'm not sure, but she's definitely on one of those adventures. And if you haven't listened to Chloe's episode, then go back and give it a cheeky little listen. Chloe's episode came out on the 21st of May, and she shared that she was going to be heading out to do the Southwest Coast Path and the GR10. But big shout out to all of you. You're all amazing. And if you have not heard this for a while, and sometimes you need to hear it, I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of you for showing up, for doing what you need to do. Because sometimes I think people don't hear that enough. Women don't hear that, you know what? You've done a good job, because you have done a good job. I've done a good job. I'm doing a great job. I'm motivating myself now. But if you'd like to support the work that I do, then please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Sign up as a monthly or annual patron. You can also share the Tough Girl Podcast on social media. You can tell one friend about the Tough Girl Podcast. That is an amazing way of spreading these incredible stories of amazing women doing wonderful and epic and amazing challenges. But all that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.